Jeff, welcome to trnblock.com. Now, Accolade Wines is a major player in the UK, EMEA and Australian markets. Can we start this conversation by asking your view on the key trends for the travel retail wine category over the past few years?
Yeah, thank you, Peter. It's great to be here. It's actually a really interesting question and well timed because it's 3 years since I joined Accolade Wines in March 2024 and 3 years since working in the wine industry. What I found when I came in was there was a significant widespread rationalisation in the wine category in travel retail, especially in the global retail market. There was a lack of interest in activating wine over the other categories like spirits, and also not much interest in innovation. If we fast forward 3 years, we've rejuvenated our strategy. We've looked at what we want to achieve in the market. Our previous strategy was driven by premium. We've now re-looked at that, and our focus is clearly on our key brands such as Mudhouse, Hardy's, Wise Wolf, and Jamshed. And we've done that because we've seen what the consumer wants in the marketplace. Times are tough. People have got less control over the disposable income, and they're making choices when they go to travel retail. So offering great quality wine at a real value offering is what the consumer wants. So we've looked at that strategy. We've changed how we approach wine in the marketplace, and we've seen some really strong results from that.
Martin, welcome. Now, 2023 has been a really good year for Accolade. You're something like 8% up against forecast. What is the current split between your domestic and travel retail businesses? And how do you see the ratio changing in the coming years?
Yeah, thanks Peter, and good to be here. Thanks for having us. Yeah, we're very pleased with the year so far, and 8% up has been a good result so far, but hopefully much more to come. To answer your question, travel retail has a low single figure percentage of our overall business. That's more or less in line with where consumers spend their money domestically anyway. But it's also fair to say that travel retail underplays in wine. If you look at the alcohol category specifically, in a typical domestic market, you may expect wine to have around a 30% share of alcohol, whereas in travel retail, it has more like a 5 to 10% share. So part of the reason we've got some growth is we're starting to affect that and make a difference with our retailers, but there's definitely much more we can do. And we would like the GTR business to outpace the domestic business as we move forward for sure. Now, all of that said, we already have a really good GTR business, and we're very pleased with the role it plays for us, a really crucial role that it plays for us strategically. So we really value and recognise the role that it can play for consumers, a great place to experience brands, to buy brands, and everything from ferries all the way through to airports. An amazing retail platform, of course, with great dwell time and really good retail experiences.
Do you think the category buyers themselves will recognise the opportunity in the wine category?
I think they're starting to do more, to be honest. I think spirits is a really easy, natural focus in travel retail.
But even with spirits, they arguably get it wrong because vodka is underrepresented.
Sometimes. No, I think they're more and more recognising that. And it's absolutely down to us as a leading wine company to really persuade them and show them the evidence of that. But I think for sure consumers more and more are looking at wine, whether it's premium wine for gifting or whether it's something for themselves, to see it as a really good place to purchase wine. I think one of the things that I'd like to see and we'd like to see is maybe a bit more thought into the ranges. So I'll give you one example. I came through Copenhagen airport just last night. So Copenhagen, in Denmark, more widely, there's a really strong New World wine business. We are by far the biggest New World supplier in the domestic market. But in the airport, where there's a really big wine range actually, there's not a lot of New World, and there's nothing from Accolade. So that's a really good example of an airport that probably is using a global range for a domestic market, and maybe missing the opportunity within this space they are giving it, missing the opportunity to really give an offer to the shoppers that are walking through that they're going to recognise and buy into. So it's not just about space and giving the wine category space in the store, it's also about how you use that space, maybe a bit more thought to make it really relevant for the shoppers that are going to be seeing it.
Now, in the past few years, you appear as a business to have undergone a fairly major transformation, literally morphing from heritage to New World and outright modern wines in a very major way. I mean, can you give us some background to what appears to be a wholesale change?
Well, we've certainly tried to change and improve. So, by the nature of you asking the question, I'll take that as a compliment. You've seen some change. I think what we've tried to do is become a much more consumer and customer-centric business. If I go back a few years, we're very focused on just our heritage brands, and that's still really crucial to what we do. I think we focus on too many things in the past, but now we're really focused on the things that add the most value. So talking about heritage brands, a brand like Hardee's, our biggest brand, which is 170 years old, we're actually focusing even more on Hardee's as a brand because it's such an important brand that plays a crucial role for consumers. And the way we've taken on that challenge is we've renovated the brand, new packaging, new portfolio strategy, lots of NPD, including here in GTR with the likes of premium selection renovation, and more recently the launch of the 8. But alongside the heritage focus, we've brought in a new tier, or a new part of the portfolio, which is around being disruptive and adding distinctive brands to the category.
These are uber cool brands. I know Jeff is
really
going to talk
cool
about
brands.
later on.
Yeah, really great. Yeah, so I'm talking about brands like Jam Shed, Mudhouse, and more recently remastered Cupiolo. And the reason for this focus, when we looked at the category a few years ago, it was really clear to us that spirits doing a great job recruiting consumers, bringing excitement. Just think about gin and the whole thing around flavoured gin and craft gin. Mm-hmm. Even the same in beer, actually, with craft beer. But wine we felt was a little bit boring, almost a little bit staid. And really, in terms of bringing consumers into the category, into alcohol, and therefore adding value to our retailers, we saw the opportunity to really show some leadership in this space. And when we looked at the way to do that and we did the research on it, it was all about bringing some disruption and some new news.
This is almost like retail sex.
Exactly. So you'll have seen a lot of the brands that we just mentioned. The packaging tends to be quite different, so quite modern, quite disruptive, almost quite quirky. The taste is often a bit different. Quite a brand like Jam Shed, a good example. Mm-hmm. Very accessible taste, actually quite a sweet wine, but something that you can have a drink of if you don't normally drink wine. It's a good way into the category. And a brand like that, we're selling well over 1 million cases just in Europe after a few years. It's really making a difference.
So how then do you actually see the business developing? How much are you prioritising other geographical regions where arguably you've got more limited distribution currently?
Yeah, that's fair. So I think when I look at the Accolade business overall, about 95% of our consumption is within either EMEA or Australasia. So from a travel retail perspective, it definitely makes sense for us to start with those regions. That's where the biggest opportunity is. So our consumers will recognise our brands from enjoying them domestically. So the biggest way we can help our travel retail partners is to make sure we have the right range and the right value proposition in those particular regions. And we've made huge progress on that over the last couple of years. Now that said, we have the domestic businesses in the Americas and Asia, which are smaller but faster growing, and within travel retail that is also an ambition. So in Asia, for example, just recently we've launched a really strong premium range across Changi, Singapore with Lotte, and also with Cathay Pacific, we've just launched Grant Burge across their economy cabins.
Back to you, Jeff. What percentage do you see Hardee's representing in your forecasts compared to the new and really quite special introductions that you made as a business?
Yeah, Hardee's is our global drive brand. It represents more than 50% of our volume in travel retail, but significantly more in terms of value. So it's a really important part of our portfolio, which is complemented by innovation brands like Jam Shed, Wise Wolf, Cupiolo, and so on. I think the reason why Hardee's is so important to the consumer is because it's a really great quality wine at a very good price. It's a consistent wine, so consumers know that regardless of the vintage that they're opening, the same taste profile and mouthfeel that they get with a Hardee's wine is consistent every time they open a bottle. In travel retail, we've got a very wide range of wines in our portfolio, from the Hardee's varietal range, or Hardee's VR, which is that entry-level wine which is accessible to most consumers, through to the likes of Premium Selection, which is our global travel retail exclusive line in a Chardonnay and a Shiraz varietal, all the way up to Eileen, which is our flagship premium wine, which gives us the best Chardonnay, the best Shiraz grapes that we can produce in Australia to give consumers a really great bottle of wine at a very, very affordable price when you compare it to some of its competition in the premium sector.
Of course, this year is very special. I mean, Hardee's is all of 170 years young. And to celebrate, you've launched a travel retail exclusive called Hardy's 8. Intriguing name, that. Now, I had the opportunity to taste it in Cannes, and it's absolutely fabulous. But there's a great backstory to this too, isn't there?
Yeah, that's right, Peter. So, as you say, we're very, very proud of our heritage, and it's been 170 years since Thomas Hardy first sailed from Devon in the UK to Australia to start making wine. And he went there with a mission to produce accessible wines that can be enjoyed the world over. And we strive to continue that legacy in the wines that we make even now. So our global head winemaker, Helen McCarthy, personally selected 8 barrels of wine from the 2016 vintage from 3 different regions in Australia, which are the Franklin River, McLaren Vale and Coonawarra. And she's crafted a beautiful Cabernet Sauvignon Shiraz blend, retailing at 250 Aussie dollars a bottle, which really highlights the quality of the winemaking in Australia and the kind of wines we can produce. Now, there's only 2004 bottles produced of this wine, and as you say, you're very lucky to have sampled one of those bottles in Cannes. So this is a real treat for people that want to collect wine. It's got at least 10 years of aging in the bottle, and all those tertiary flavours will start to come through in the next decade, and it is a really, really superb quality wine that we're very, very proud of.
Okay, let's go back, or maybe I should say forward, to some of the newer brands that you've launched recently. I mean, there's Be Ink by Grant Berge and Jam Shed, and these are just 2 of these brands that had a very impressive presence at TFWO in Cannes. Each, of course, has got its own unique identity, and of course they form, importantly, an integral part of your strategy to drive new, younger consumers to both your domestic and travel retail partners, don't they?
Yeah, absolutely. I think if you look at a wine category, you go to a supermarket or a travel retail store, you see a wall of wine. And often they're very similar labelled bottles, and the language that they use describing the wine can be quite confusing for the consumer. So with the likes of Jam Shed, which are unapologetically simple but great quality, they stand out on shelf. The consumer can try a wine from a different region. So, for example, in the Jam Shed range, you can have an Argentinian Malbec, you can have an Australian Shiraz, you could have a Spanish Tempranillo. So it's a great way for consumers to access different grape varieties in different producing countries in a brand that they know and trust. And that's been a real success for us. And actually, Martin's already sort of described the success we've had. But the Jam Shed wine has actually delivered over £100 million worth of retail sales value in 6 years, and it's growing. And we will keep adding innovation to that, which is always based on a consumer insight that we get from either our category team or from our retail partners to launch that wine. So it's a really important way to bring people into the newer categories versus established brands such as Hardy's, which have a very different consumer. And that's very similar for Be Ink as well. So Grant Berge is a well-renowned winery in South Australia, in Barossa Valley. We make some fantastic red wines and white wines under the Grant Berge name. In the UK, it's not as well known, so we took the opportunity to launch Be Ink, which is a label that is very impactful, it's vibrant, it's different, it has almost like a graffiti element to it. The wines are very accessible, they're not heavy, they're not over oaked, so the Chardonnay is very light, the red blend is a beautiful blend of different grapes, and the rosé is very similar to a Provençal style in terms of flavour and profile. So what this does is allow people to access the wine category from a visual perspective and also from a taste perspective. And then we look at brands like Wise Wolf, which is our 100% recycled glass wine bottle. It's 100% recycled paper label and also the closure. The bottle is unique, so it really stands out on shelf, and consumers, once they've had the wine, have started a movement where they actually repurpose the wine bottle post use. So we're seeing olive oil being decanted into the bottle, people using it for candle holders. We even have some that actually repurposes the glass to make jewellery. So that whole cyclicality of the wine industry is really encompassed within the Wise Wolf brand, and we're very, very proud of it.
You're not concerned, are you, that perhaps the new brands may cannibalise the share of shelf space that Hardy's currently sits on, or obviously your strategy is clearly defined as being one where you're actually growing the market and growing your share of shelf space with the introduction of the new brands.
Yeah, well, it's always a concern because space isn't elastic. But I think there's enough in Hardy's to make it a must-stock brand in travel retail. People will seek out that brand because they know and they trust it. And new brands are going to be taking the wine category forward. The Hardy's consumer is very different. That needs to be
recognised by the category buyers. They've got their own unique dynamic.
Exactly, and as I said before, you know, the wine space has been squeezed over the last few years, and there's a big opportunity to open that up, whether that's off shelf or on shelf. There is a lot more opportunity to sell wine because of the price point. If people are in a position where they don't have a huge amount of disposable income, they're not going to spend 50, 60 pounds on a bottle of whiskey or gin. They're more likely to spend £6 or £7 on a bottle of wine. And if you take the UK ferries, for example, since Brexit and the reintroduction of duty free, and then subsequently the impact of the duty changes in the UK, we're offering 40 to 50% saving on wines in their stores, where you can buy a case of Jam Shed for £30.
It's a no-brainer.
So
really.
Exactly, yeah. It's a real winner for both us and for the retailers, and it just increases that basket spend for the retailer.
I mean, everything that you and Jeff have said so far in this interview leads to one single question. Has the DNA of Accolade Wines changed, and is that important?
I think what we'd like to say is that the DNA of Accolade Wines has been significantly enhanced in the last 3 or 4 years. That's what I would say. We've tried to keep the best of what we had, but really enhance that with a more modern strategy. If I just break it down into, I guess, 3 things that I think are really important. So people, strategy, and execution. And I'll start with people. So I guess 3 or 4 years ago, I would say we had a really good wine team. So we've tried to keep the best of what we had, but we've also added a lot of best-in-class FMCG capability. And that's really trying to take us on a journey from being a good wine business to being a tier 1 FMCG business. I think we've successfully made that transition. And linking into strategy, what that's given us is the capability to really develop that insight-based strategy, really focus on the consumer and the retailer, and that's what's led to some of the new innovation that you've asked about that we've seen coming in. And we've seen that build into success and sales improvements. So in terms of execution, that gives us the confidence to really focus on those big bets that are making the biggest difference. So allowing us to really decide which of the partners that we can add the most value with, and also the brands that we can use to really enhance their portfolio and enhance their category sales.
So if there was then one word that best defined your DNA currently, what would it be?
I think it would have to be collaboration. I think we're all about delivering great experiences for consumers, but of course without our customers and our partners, that's impossible. So collaboration is what we're all about.
Now, just moving on, sustainability is really at the core of allegedly most companies' claims right now, and it's certainly on the lips of everyone in this business. I know that you've revamped your stand at Cannes recently, and it was conceived with sustainability at its very core. But the broader question remains, what sustainable actions have you as a business taken over the past 12 months, and what are your plans for the next 12 months?
Yeah, thanks, Peter. So it's definitely the heart of what we do. So let me start with the first part of the question, the last 12 months. So we've been very focused on sustainability for some time. And one of the outcomes of that is that we've been proud here in Europe to have a carbon neutral business certified since 2020. And of course, there's hundreds of things that are involved, actions involved to make that happen. I'll just give you a couple of specific things that we're proud of. So one thing would be that we have 98% recyclable packaging. And we've really enhanced that over the last 12 months, adding sustainable brands like Wise Wolf, focusing on flat bottle, and now focusing on more lightweighted glass. That'd be one thing. A second thing would be that at the Park, which is our production facility we work with in the UK for a European business, we have 100% renewable electricity, and half of that comes from their on-site wind turbine. So very proud of the work that we've been doing for many years, actually, but especially the last 12 months. We've been really quite thoughtful about how we take it forward to come on to the next 12 months. And actually in the UK and in Europe in particular, we've heard lots in the press about greenwashing, and the carbon neutral claim that we make and others has almost become a little bit suspicious, or people don't really understand what it means. So we're going to move from that strategy onto a more ambitious net zero strategy. So by 2040 we aim to be a net zero business. We're going to use 2024 to define what that means. So we'll come up with we'll settle upon some science-based targets to really get around that. It'll certainly mean that we focus on a wider range of things, so beyond just carbon, so looking at methane and other hydrocarbons, and also making sure that we focus well beyond kind of scope 1 emissions in the value chain.
What about distribution chain?
Yeah, exactly. So we'll look at scope 2 and scope 3 as part of that process and define something that's a lot more ambitious.
One last question, Jeff. If there are 3 things that you want to say to the travel retail industry right now, what would they be?
I think firstly, use category data. There's a wealth of information in FMCG businesses that will really help you shape what your range should look like. Martin's already referenced one of our markets, Denmark, that doesn't represent the domestic market in travel retail, and that's not unique across a number of our partners. We can work with our retail partners to put forward a really strong range that reflects what the consumer wants in those airports. I think secondly is innovate. Use innovative brands. Be open to trialling new things, whether it's Wise Wolf, whether it's Jam Shed, whether even it's the 8. We have a really strong portfolio of differentiated brands that allow you to hit a certain price point or a certain varietal or a certain consumer need. And wine really gives that accessibility to the consumer. And then thirdly, just try more wine. Drink more wine. There's a number of wines that are out there that are fantastic quality, great price, and it's a really exciting category to get yourself into because there's so much you can learn and engage with the product, and people talk passionately about wine and they care about it, and I think there's a real opportunity to widen the offering that is available in travel retail.
Great stuff, Jeff. Thank you, and Martin, for your time.
Peter, thank you very much.